So today I want to talk to you about log with video and what it is and why you would use it. And I'm also going to put it on the computer here so you can see exactly what it does. So, if you're using still images, you've got JPEG and then you've got RAW. JPEG is the small file size, very convenient, but you can't make too many adjustments. With RAW, you can make a lot more in the way of adjustments, such as color, exposure, and contrast, and so many other things as well. You can even change the highlights and the shadows and things like that. Well, in video, you've got a similar kind of thing. You've got the linear recording, which is what we normally use, and there is RAW, but RAW has very, very big file sizes. So to give you an idea, if you're shooting 4K, like on the Canon RAW Lite, then a 128 gigabyte card will hold about 15 minutes of video. I've got the Canon EOS R5 here. This shoots 8K RAW, again a light version. And with this, a 256 gigabyte card is going to hold about 13 minutes. So something that I don't use very often. But RAW does give you better quality. It gives you more dynamic range as well. So what that means is that you've got more detail in the very bright areas and more detail as well in the very dark areas. Whereas linear, maybe those kind of bright bits get blown out and you don't see the detail. And down in the dark areas, it might just crush the black so you can't actually make them out. But RAW, as you can tell, is massive, but it has its advantages. But there is also log, which is a smaller file size, which is far more manageable. So what's the difference between linear and log? Well, log stands for logarithmic, and it records it in a logarithmic kind of format. You've got much more dynamic range, perhaps not as much as RAW, but still more dynamic range than linear. And you can also grade it more afterwards. So you can do things like adjust the exposure and so on. So what it does is it kind of shoots a flat looking image. And when you do that, you've then got to go into the computer and add a look. And that comes from something called a lookup table. And we're going to look at those in just a moment. They're called LUTS for short. And you get them on the computer. A lot of things like Premiere Pro and Final Cut Pro that we're looking at here. And also I'm going to have a quick look at Lumafusion, which works on the iPad Pro. They have some built in, but you can download them from the manufacturers. So Canon here has Canon Log or C-Log. And then Sony has S-Log, Nikon N-Log, and so on, so you get the idea. And you can download those LUTs, if they're not already on the computer, from their websites. But people also create LUTs, and then you can purchase those, or maybe they might be giving them away for free as well. And they might give you things like old-style movie looks, or maybe something that's very rich and vivid. So it's worth having a look at those as well. And we're just going to have a quick look at those in a minute here as well. So on the camera here, not all cameras can shoot log, this one does. So what you need to do is make sure it is switched on. So for that I go into my camera menu here on the Canon and I'm on the third tab here and I can go into Canon Log and switch that on, and you can see there's Canon Log and Canon Log 3. Canon Log 3 gives a better dynamic range. It's a newer version of C-Log, Canon Log. There is Canon Log 2 as well, but that's not on this camera. It might be on other high-end cameras. So you need to just look through those and potentially pick the best one for you. Now, if I'm looking at the back of the camera, again, it's looking a bit flat. And what I need to do is give it a bit of help, and I'm going to use a View Assist for that. And it's in the menu. I'm going to switch it on. Now this will sort of apply a look, kind of a standard look that Canon thinks is right for this, and that will help me understand the exposure, and I can see the colors better than if it wasn't switched on at all. Now you can do this with HDMI recorders as well, like this, and then you can put LUTs, different LUTs into this and actually see what you're getting. So this actually is a little like monitor. It's got a hard drive in it and so on, but I've got another video about that, so take a look at that. I've got the link below. So once you've shot it, you then need to get it on the computer here, and when you do, you're going to first, if you look at them the first time around, you're going to think, oh my gosh, what's happened here? They look dreadful. They just look completely flat and lacking color and things. So I've got Premiere Pro open here. We're going to then look at Final Cut Pro. I'm then going to take a look at it on Lumafusion, which works on the iPad. I've got an iPad Pro here, and that works really well. It's great for editing on the go, but you don't have to be on the go. It's just great for editing as well. So let's just take a look at it here on Premiere Pro. So I was down at the docks doing some filming, and you can see here this image. It looks a little bit flat. You can see it's cloudy. It's got a bit of blue in there. And what I'm going to do, I'm on the color tab at the top, and I'm in the basic correction. It's got input LUTs. That's your lookup table, as I mentioned before. I'm going to click here, and you can see down here, it's got this Canon Log 3. That's what I shot it in. I'm going to choose it, and you can immediately see it put color, more color in there. Let's go back to none. You can see it looks a bit flat, lacking contrast, and I can choose that one. Now, even though I shot it in that one, I don't have to use that one. Let's just actually try one below here, which is this D21D log. And you can see it gives more contrast. Maybe the sky comes out a bit more. But the thing is I can go back to here. Let's go back to the Canon log one. And you'll see I've already done things like adjust the contrast. I can pull the highlights right up or right down. And you can see what that does. Maybe I need to pull the shadows up a bit. And I can add a bit of saturation in there as well. And you can see the difference that makes just up in that corner. Right, so let's just choose another file. Let's just double click on this one to open it up. Again, you can see it's looking flat. I go to my input LUTs. Now these are ones that I installed. I can browse for some if I've got some on the computer. If you use them a lot, you could install them. Let's just go for the Canon Log 3 again. Wow, look at that, it suddenly punches it all up. Let's have a look at that again. Let's go to none, and then you can see what happens if I choose it here. And that makes really, really big difference. And then, as I said, you can adjust the exposure, the contrast, maybe a bit of that in there, and you've got saturation. So it gives you a lot more flexibility than you had if you were doing this just with a linear file as well. And it gives you more dynamic range, as I said before. Now, let's just have a look at this in Final Cut Pro. So I'm here in Final Cut Pro. Again, you can see this image here is looking a little bit flat. What I do here is on the right up at the top, click on I, and if I scroll down a bit, there you go, Camera LUTs, and you can see it's got the built-in ones. These custom camera ones are the ones that I installed afterwards. And you can also add a custom camera LUT, so you can, just like in Premiere Pro where you go and browse for one, you can actually install it. But let's just have a look. So this is the built-in Canon Log 3. Okay, that's what it looks like, quite bright. Now I did that on Premiere Pro, it didn't quite do the same, so different editing software might look a little bit different. So let's just go to the one that I downloaded. So this one here is the same one that I used when I did it on Premiere Pro. And you can see it looks a little bit different. Go through these LUTs, you can see how different they are. What about if I used a Sony one? Just remember that these LUTs, whether you're using them in Premiere Pro, Final Cut Pro, Lumafusion or something else, are just often a starting point for where you want to be. But let's just go to the Canon one. Now, to make the adjustments, I actually need to put it into my timeline here. So let's just do that. And it works differently to how it works in Premiere. These are straddle carriers, in case you're wondering, which I use to move containers around down on the docks. So I've got my color board here, which is at the top here, which is the color inspector. Let's go to that. And I actually think the saturation looks very high on this. It's very vibrant. You might want it. I can push it up, but I can also pull it down maybe a little bit. With the exposure, I can perhaps pull down my highlights just a bit and maybe pull that down a little bit, the shadows, and do something there. You can see if I push it right up, it just blows everything out. So I'm trying to get some of that back. Now with color, I can also change that. So maybe your white balance wasn't quite right when you did this, or maybe you're just looking for a particular look, and you can just see the difference that you can make here compared to what you would do if this was just linear. So that's Premiere Pro, that's Final Cut Pro. Let's take a really quick look at how this works if I was going to put this into Lumafusion. So I'm just in Lumafusion. I'm just going to tap and drag that into my timeline. So that's another one. You can see it's looking a bit flat here. I'm going to double tap on it, and I'm on my color and effects that you can see down in the bottom here. And there is a cube up at the top here, this one here. That is my LUTS. It's the Canon Log 3. Let's tap on it. Now, if I want to make changes, the way that I get to my exposure is on this what looks like artist's palette. Tap on that. I'm going to choose original, and now I get my settings come up here, and I can adjust my brightness, my contrast, maybe knock the saturation down, which will make it look a bit more real as well. And as you can see, I've got all sorts of settings here that I can adjust as well. So if your camera has log, you can see it's got a lot of benefits there, such as the dynamic range and being able to do the grading afterwards. So some people think that it takes up a lot more time, and it can if you do spend a lot of time grading. But you don't have to, and you can see you can get a very quick, good results, and just by choosing a look that can be built in and maybe just making small adjustments. You can even do it on things like your iPhone. I've got Filmic Pro on here, and that has a log as well. So it's not just your cameras, well, your iPhone and I guess your other smartphones are cameras these days. So if your camera or your phone does support log, give it a go. Why not, and see how different it looks. I pretty much always shoot when I'm using my camera in log. Thanks for watching. If you do like this, please do like, share and subscribe, and come back for more.